Welcome to Small Biz Life, episode 42, Working with Your Web Stats.
Does this sound familiar?
Oh my god, I have so much to do today.
Don't forget to breathe.
But I have almost 400 emails in my inbox and 30 phone calls to make.
Have you looked into getting a virtual assistant yet?
Oh, and I need to schedule all my social media posts.
Did you drink anything today?
I had coffee.
Did you eat today?
Did I mention coffee's a bean?
This is Small Biz Life.
Welcome to this week's episode of Small Biz Life. My name is Kristen Ingram.
And I'm Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And we are a husband and wife team who are walking through this journey with you on the Small Biz Life.
And what a journey it is.
So we know that this is not just a 9-to-5 job. This is something that we're doing 24/7. Even on our time off, we're generally checking email or looking at our website stats, right, to work in today's topic. So today we are going to talk about web stats because when we were preparing for episode 41, a lot of people asked us why do I have to look at Google Analytics? What can my web stats do for me? Should I even look at them at all?
You know, I think in general, people are more comfortable with social media stats because they're easier to comprehend. There aren't very many of them. But really, ultimately, there's not a lot you can do with them. You know, you want to increase them because it helps in social media, but it's not necessarily going to tell you a lot.
Right. So we're going to start this episode by talking about where you should look for web stats. And these just aren't the statistics for your website, but it's also for your competitors' websites.
Yes.
Because that can tell you a lot about where you want to go in the future.
Mm-hmm.
What are a couple of the sites that people should be looking at?
Well, there is SimilarWeb, which is a great one, especially once you start driving large statistics, on your site. And by large, I think the cutoff is about the top 1 million, maybe in the US, I think, sites that are there. And with the number of sites, that's not as easy as it sounds. Although if you keep at it, I think it's easier than you'd expect. And then there's also Alexa. And that is a site, I believe Amazon now owns them up. And essentially that will give you a lot of really good statistics on your site. Once again, I think you have to be in the top, million sites in the world, or in the US, one of the two, to be indexed by them. But it'll also give you some general breakdowns and some very important information about how your site's performing in the mind of Alexa.
And you can use both of those sites to look up your competitor sites.
Yeah.
So the thing that's really cool with both of these sites is that they will tell you the main keywords that are driving traffic to both your site and your competitor sites, how much of it is direct traffic, search traffic, how much is coming from Google. SimilarWeb will tell you whether it's paid traffic or free traffic. So this is a really good way for you to kind of see what's going on with your website and with your competitors' website so you can try to grab traffic from them.
Yeah, most definitely. And the thing to keep in mind is the exact strategies they use are probably not going to be the exact strategies that you're using anyway. But it can show you, especially, I think the big thing is it can show you holes in what you're talking about. So if you're covering an area that surrounds your business on a blog site and this other blog site that you consider your competitor is doing the same thing, you might go to and see entire areas that you've to this point have neglected to even talk about.
Exactly. So it gives you a lot of really good information.
Yeah. It is sort of a big broad stroke, sort of what they call that in business, the 30,000-foot view of websites.
Exactly. If you want to look for more detailed information about your own site, should you check Google Analytics?
There are a couple different things you can check. Google Analytics I like because it has the best knowledge on the users. So it's really hard for a user to revisit your site and not have it picked up by Google as the same person. They don't really look at what you call visitors per se. Oh, I can't believe I just said per se, but but what they look at is these things called sessions, and sessions are the number of times individual spins on your site. So if I go to your site 5 times, those are 5 sessions. And then they also look at visitors, but it's not quite the same thing as visitors when you're talking about web stats. They're looking at you, the individual, and it's much more identifiable through Google than it is through your web server, because they know the cookies. They know who's probably on the browser if you have multiple people using it at the same time. So it's a little bit more exacting.
And Google's really good for getting demographic information, but it's not going to tell you a lot about details of where people are going on your site. It doesn't really give you keyword information. And so for that, I like going into my cPanel on my website.
Yeah, cPanels are usually the backdrop to most WordPress hosting sites, not always. And to be honest, I'd be a bit leery of using a host that did not have a cPanel backdrop. It's another open source piece of software, so there's some consistency to it from host to host. And it's by far, I'm just guessing, but I believe it is by far the most used back end for a website. And essentially, there are multiple different types of software that are used in the back end to track server stats. There is raw log data, which you'd have to parse through to get any really useful information. And then there are pieces of software like, I guess you'd say AW stats or AWOL stats is what we always called it.
Aw stats.
Aw stats.
I don't know.
Aw stats. But this is by far the most useful information, I think, because it will tell you some very specific, important things that you have to take into consideration at a tactical level, at a level you can operate on more easily and shift a lot more easily from tactical than it is at the higher level, which is what you get from Google Analytics or those other sites that we talked about. Yeah.
So when I'm looking at our sites, I typically don't use Google Analytics very much, because for especially for Accounting and Focus, which is our largest site, mm-hmm. I already know the demographic.
Yeah.
So, and I look a lot at the demographic information from YouTube.
Yeah.
YouTube actually gives you a lot of information.
Yeah.
But I use Awstats, I use SimilarWeb, and now I'm actually going to be using Alexa a lot more, because mm-hmm. that gives you some really good information too.
Yeah. And each of them have different. The major thing you really understand for where you need to go is the type of information you're looking for. But I think by far the most useful from a business standpoint are your server stats. And not that they're going to give you big advertising agreements based off of what you're saying your server says your traffic is, but they will tell you where people are coming, where people are going, how long they're spending there. They'll give you that kind of stuff too. And probably the most useful stat and the most important to know is hits versus visitors versus unique visitors. Those are 3 very important different things. And I think typically people think hits are very important. Hits are not important at all. Hits just mean the number of requests that go to your web page. And if you have links internally to your code for style sheets or for JavaScript behind the scenes stuff, whenever a browser hits that, it requests that from your server. So anytime someone visits one page, they are going to get more than one hit. And images, everything that's on your page is going to come up. So that number is going to be out of whack. And depending on what pages they visit, if they visit a page that has a lot of different internal linking, it's going to cause a lot more hits. So it's not a very good number. The more important number usually are visitors. Visitors are identifiable people on your site. And these could also be spiders, but these are physical presences that are visiting your site.
And I know Awstats actually pulls the spiders out from your unique visitors. So remember we've talked about bots before, and we've talked about spiders. So Awstats, which is in your cPanel, will actually pull those out from the traffic numbers.
Those you need on your site especially the search engine ones, because they will help your site get indexed, but they're not useful they're not your audience.
Exactly. Let's kind of go through the important things that you should look at, because I think what most people do is they go in, they look at, the number of visitors
and unique visitors, and then they leave
and they stop.
Yeah.
And I actually, when I'm going through looking at our numbers, I probably spend the least amount of time in that section, because what I'm looking for is things like, what time of day do people end up on my site? Yeah. That's a really interesting thing to look at. Like, what are your peak times on your website? Because you can do a lot of scheduling with that.
Yeah. Because when people are visiting your site is probably one where you want to deliver your new content around or just before that time. And the other thing too is when you're actually getting your website worked on, it's going to be a larger server load. So you are going to want to perform those in off-peak times.
Exactly. And that's even good for things like if you want to run Facebook ads, if you look at when people are typically going to your website, you can say, okay, I'm going to run Google ads during my peak hours, because that seems to be when my ideal customer, right, is engaged to go to my website.
And that's always one question people have is who is my ideal customer? And that's where Google Analytics comes in very useful, and the information on Stats will actually tell you both the days of the week and the hour of the day that people are on your site. And those are two basic pieces of information you really need to know, because when you can limit down, especially if you're doing paid ads, or even when you're scheduling your social media, you can base specifically off of these times, because they're probably not logging on the computer just to go to your site. That's just when they're on the computer.
Right. So when I run Facebook ads for Accounting in Focus, I don't run ads at 6:00 in the morning. I probably don't start running ads until about noon for that site, because my ideal customer is 18 to 23. And if I look at my stats for Accounting in Focus, my peak user hours are from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m.
Wow.
So if I'm running ads on my site, I want to be running ads in the evening and even in the overnight.
Yeah.
Because that's when students are online. That's when they're looking for help. So knowing that piece of information really helps me when I'm doing targeted advertising.
And for most of us too, we're putting up multiple links to social media a day. And another good thing that you can do is when your peak hours are, if you have that specific really big thing that you push out once a day, which is maybe a blog post, or maybe you're selling a product, in your major call to action of the day, that tells you when to do it.
And it's actually interesting because when we look at Small Biz Life, the traffic for that site is like 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. So knowing those type of things, and like I said, it's laid out really well in Stats.
And it's really interesting too, because if you look at our three main sites, because the other one being Gardool.com, is they all have different peak hour times, because Gardool's sort of between, is probably more from like 3 p.m. until about 9 or 10. So it's in the middle. So even when these things, you think your customer because of your schedule, that might not be true.
Exactly. So that'll give you some really good information. Another thing is where your traffic is coming from. I see quite frequently when small businesses, they want to be on every single social media channel. And if you look at your stats will tell you where people are coming from. So for Small Biz Life, most of our traffic comes from Facebook.
Yeah.
Even though we post every episode on Pinterest, on Twitter, I'm doing stuff on Instagram, the traffic is coming from Facebook. So when I'm sitting there saying, okay, where am I going to spend more time? It's going to be on Facebook.
And there's nothing wrong with having your stuff show up in different places because, it costs you very little to put them in Pinterest. But the thing is, where do you spend and focus your energy on the business side of social media? And once again, Garduel.com, it's Twitter. Twitter is king for that site. So when I'm interacting with my audience, I do it there. I don't do it on Facebook.
Exactly. So that gives you some really good information. It also shows you if other sites are linking to you. So for example, for Accounting in Focus, I actually have a lot of universities that link to my information. And unfortunately, I can't see where that is linking internally into, in the university's website. So I don't know if it's students that are talking about it in their course management. I don't know if it's professors that are actually linking in content, but I know that I'm getting traffic from those universities, which in episode 41, we talked about how when you get links from universities, that helps lift up your search ranking.
Woohoo.
So woohoo for that.
So thank you, students or professors.
That's right. So we talked about this a little bit, unique visitors versus page views. So unique visitors are individual people that come to your site, whereas page views or visits, it could be the same people coming back. It could be the same people viewing multiple pages.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, a visitor will be one person, but you could go there every day of the month. And so if you look at your visitors, you get 30 for one person if the month is 30 days long, but only one unique visitor. And then page views, if he visits 15 pages, every time he visits your site, is going to be a much larger number. It's good to see the page views and where they happen. That's the more important thing with page views are which pages are getting the most views. But when it comes to overall site traffic, visitors and especially unique visitors are the most important.
And that you can get out of Stats
Yep.
in your cPanel. One piece of information that I do like from Google Analytics, they will tell you if your traffic is from new visitors or returning visitors. So that will tell you how loyal your audience is. Are they coming to you once and then they're not coming back again? If you're running Facebook ads or Google ads, are you getting the new traffic that you want? Or are you just seeing a lot of people going, oh yeah, I remember that site, and they're returning again?
Yeah, one thing to understand, and which I didn't really say for unique visitors, it's for a period of time. So if I come once in January, once in February, I'm a unique visitor for January and February. A returning, but however, Google Analytics will look at me as a returning guest.
Right. So that's really good to be able to look at that and see, the customer loyalty that you have. Are people returning over and over again? And
that's really where you see how it plays in. It's a strategy thing. So you can sit there and go, I need to work on that part. Most of these things will tell you what your bounce rate is, which is where they come on and leave away. So if you have trouble with that number, you make strategic decisions to try and reduce that from happening. Maybe that's a page speed issue. Maybe you're attracting the wrong people to your site. Who knows? But the thing is, it tells you strategically where you have to plan out.
Yeah, and I think that's really good to understand is bounce rate. So in episode 41, we talked about bounce rate and how that means that people are coming onto your site and then they're leaving. So, one thing we found is that when you're looking at your bounce rate, it's going to vary site to site.
Yeah.
So I had one site that said that Accounting in Focus's bounce rate was like 80%, and another site said it was 64%.
And a lot of that, it's not wrong in either place, but it's like any statistic. They have an analytical meaning behind what bounce rate is. So if you get confused, you do research on what they mean by bounce rate, because maybe it's if they're there for under 40 seconds or 30 seconds or maybe 5 seconds. Who knows? But ultimately, it really comes down to if Google considers it a bounce.
Right.
Mainly if you're looking for search engine results.
Right. And so that's one thing is that I'm now starting to look at Accounting in Focus and saying, okay, how can I put in more headlines in order for people to be able to find the information they're looking for quickly, because the posts on that page are really long.
Yeah, and that will be overwhelming, even though it helps get people there and maybe makes it more likely for them to be able to find the answer if they read through it. If you open up a page and there are 1 to 2 to 3,000 words on that page, if there aren't a lot of headlines, people are probably going to bounce.
Right. So you might want to check out episode 41 where we talked about SEO tips, because we talked about a lot of those things in that episode. Another thing that I look for Accounting in Focus, and if you have downloads on your site, so like downloadable PDFs or Excel spreadsheets or Word documents, you're doing templates, you're giving away stock photos, there is a download section in Awstats.
Yeah.
And you can see the numbers for each of your downloaded items.
So, a good thing is, like, especially when you're looking for that next free giveaway for your site, look at a little bit less thoughtful things that you give away for free on your site, like a quick worksheet on how to book a trip to Italy. You take that and then you go, let me do something more comprehensive on that, because that has X number of more downloads than any of my other PDFs. It can help guide you to where you need to move on your website.
Well, and it's good too, because if you have a freebie that you're giving away and you want to see if people are actually downloading it, rather than having it delivered through your email, you could have it redirected on your website.
One thing, there's always a cost. Attaching things via email make your emails look more spammy. However, people are usually signing up for that thing. So be careful. Don't put way too many downloads within an email, because that will make the emails look spammy to the search engine or to the email providers.
And even if you put a link to your website where they can download it, then you can look at the number of signups you get for that item. And then are people actually downloading the form? So it kind of gives you some interesting information that, people were excited enough to sign up for your email list, but not excited enough to actually download the piece.
There's a double advantage in doing what Kristen's saying, because since you're not attaching the file to the email provider doesn't consider it more spammy, and you get better information on the download rates of all of your stuff.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, so what we're talking about is when you do your free giveaway, whether it's an Excel worksheet, a Word document, photos, a PDF, if you send out the email can have a link to the PDF, which is on your website. And then that will send them to your website to download it. And it can even be an instant thing that they click on the link and it goes right to the page and opens up, the document. Then you can measure your downloads. And I have, on Accounting in Focus, I have a number of downloads. So I have, a couple tables that students use. I have a budgeting project that I do videos on that I let students download the entire document so that they can follow along. And so I can see how many people are downloading that.
Yeah.
And I compare that to the number of people that visit those pages and kind of see, okay, so they read the stuff on the page and, they downloaded this table or they downloaded the problem.
Most definitely.
I also look at popular posts because this gives you a lot of really good information. So if you're in your cPanel, whether you're using Awstats or you're using another program, typically they're going to tell you what your most popular posts are. Sometimes those are actually going to be pages. So like, for example, I have a list of popular terms on Accounting in Focus. Some of them are the pages for those tags where people say, okay, I'm going to click on the cash flow tag.
Yeah.
And then they get all the posts that have cash flow in them. So when I see that a tag is really popular, I look to see, do I have enough content
or
for that
is there
tag?
more I could add into it?
Exactly. Yeah. Or are there other related posts that could fit into that tag that I'm not showing there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Almost definitely. Oh, I forgot to tag this post with cash flow.
Exactly. So it may make you kind of go back and look at your most popular tags and say, okay, do I need to go through and see if this keyword appears in other posts?
Or how come this post isn't there? Half that post is about it. Then you go in to edit it and you figure out, oh, I forgot to tag that.
Exactly. So we talked about this a little bit, but I spend a lot of time looking at competitor sites, especially for Accounting in Focus, because I'm trying to see what the top posts are for those sites. And I use SimilarWeb and I use Alexa for this. They will tell me what the most popular pages are for those sites.
Yeah.
What are the most popular keywords for those sites?
And if they're paid or not.
Right. And then I can say, okay, if these are free keywords that are coming up, how can I improve my content so it shows up? Or like I was looking at SimilarWeb today, and my main competitor, some of his top keywords I don't have content for yet.
Yep.
And so I'm starting to make a list and say, oh, well, I can pump out a post on that really quickly. I need to make sure I write about this.
Yep.
Maybe I need to do some more work with one of my posts to make sure that the keyword does better.
Yeah.
So it gives you a lot of really good information that you can tap into about your competitors.
Yes. And the thing to keep in mind is this is always going to be an iterative process. It should not dominate your days, but you always need to be refining and improving your content. That's why they call it content curation, because you're always slowly working and evolving to, one, keep it up with the words of the day, and two, just make it easier for people. That's really your thing is, make it as easy as possible for the people visiting your site to get to the key content that will help either drive them into your funnel, on your email list, whatever you're trying to accomplish. This is what this process does. And it will slightly change all the time. And there's no reason to be discouraged. Time itself will help improve those things. So just keep working at it.
Right, exactly. So you got to figure that Accounting in Focus turns 2 years old next month. And so I'm at the point now where I have a lot of content on that site. Now I'm starting to tweak things. So Accounting in Focus currently has 50,000 unique visitors a month. My top competitor has 2.4 million.
So we think we have room to grow.
So there's room to grow, right? So I'm starting to look at some of those bigger competitors and say, okay, what do I need to develop content for? What do I need to tweak on my website to get things to come up higher on the search results? And the thing that's pretty cool is like there are topics that we are 1, 2, or 3 in the search engines for that site. There are some keywords on my site that are my top keywords that don't show up at all for those other sites. So it's, looking to say, what are we doing well? And then what could we do better?
Of course.
Okay. And then to kind of piggyback off of that, look at the key search phrases that are bringing traffic to your site.
Yes, that's huge. Because one, you want to make sure, especially like if you're starting to focus more on a new bit of content. So if Kristen starts focusing on a certain phrase of keywords that are showing up on a competitor's site, that is her strategy. So as she goes forward and starts putting, let's say, a post up a month or whatever her time frame is, every quarter she should be going back to see, are those gaining traction? Are they showing up as popular on my site? Maybe I do need to start refining the keywords as I move along, because there's some refinements that you can sit there and go, okay, from this post on, I'm going to start doing it this way. And then as you have time, you go back and fix the old post. There's less of a rush to that, because the major thing is having an abundance of good content. The more content you have, the better you'll be rewarded by search engines. So a lot of these sites that have really good have been around longer and have a lot more content than you do. So content creation is very important. Don't stop your process and start from the beginning and update all your posts before you move ahead again. because the newer content means more, as long as it's good content, than updating your older content right away.
Exactly. All right, so now you have all this data and you've done all this research and you've looked at your competitor sites and your site and your keywords and your unique visitors and your customers that are coming to your site and what are their demographics. Now, what do you do with all that? Because I think a lot of people stop there. They look at all their stuff and they go, oh, wow, that looks cool. Okay, well, according to Alexa, Accounting in Focus is in the top 200,000 websites. Woohoo, yay, let's have a party. Awesome, cool, yay. All right, so now what do we do with it?
Yep.
So once you have a good handle on who's coming to your site, why they're coming to your site, what they're looking at on your site, this can really help you develop new content.
Yes.
And develop new products.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at where people are landing on your website, where you're showing up in the search engines, and what topics you're showing up for, these are things that people are searching for. These are things that search engines and then the people that get results from the search engines have deemed good content.
Yes.
And so if you're looking to develop a course, write a book, do coaching, these are the areas that you should focus on. So I'll give you an example. So for Accounting in Focus, between my YouTube stats and my web stats, about 20% of my traffic is generated on one topic.
Yeah.
And this is a topic that when I went through all my competitors, it didn't show up for any of them.
That differentiates her site from theirs.
So when I said, okay, I'm going to start developing premium content for Accounting in Focus, the first topic I wrote was that one.
Yeah.
Because if 20% of my traffic is coming for this one topic, and it's a really complex topic. It's something that a lot of students struggle with. I've even found that as when I'm teaching it.
Yeah.
So when I look at those numbers, I say, okay, I'm going to develop problem sets for them, more detailed explanations. And so I developed a PDF for sale on that topic. Now that one's done, now I'm going through my stats again and saying, okay, what's the next topic I should do? And I'm developing that based off traffic.
Most definitely. I think one of the things to keep in mind is a lot of times people will say, well, what's the difference between you and your competitor? And that's sometimes a tough question to answer outside of going, well, my stuff's better. These statistics help quantify. They help quantify the differences. So if there are phrases that you have that they don't touch, you could actually focus on just growing that phrase depending on how much you can get. And then you look at where they have it and that you don't, and you try and eliminate those differences. And that, ends up over time, making you hopefully more relevant than them. Now, the thing to keep in mind is if they start getting that way, trust me, they're going to start looking at you. But if you're in those early key phrases, you already have premium content created, a lot of times market share is who's there first.
Exactly. So when I look through my search terms, I look through how students are searching for things. So a lot of times people search in questions.
I know I do.
Yeah. Right. So you want to put questions sometimes in your headlines. So for a lot of Accounting in Focus headlines, they are, what is a balance sheet?
Yeah.
What is an income statement? Or I'll put in things like calculating contribution margin, because that's how my ideal customer searches for things and ends up on my website. So it can even help you with things like doing titles and subheadings, because the search engines look at your title and look at your search heading or your subheadings to see if you would answer the question that somebody is asking.
Yes.
Okay, so that's another important thing to look at. If you want to run ads for your site, looking at the keywords that people are using will help you develop your ads and make sure that those keywords are included in your ads to make them more relevant for your ideal customers. They might be search terms that you want to use when you're developing your ads. You can actually put in demographic information and things like interests into your demographic information for your ads, which will make them more relevant for the people that they're targeted to. You can also decide what content you're going to share. So if you want to run ads in order to boost up certain areas of your website, there's two different ways you could do this. You can say, I know that this post is done pretty well organically.
Yeah.
And so I want to advertise this out to more people on Facebook. Or you can say, you know, I think this post has really good potential. And so if I can get more traffic to it, it might get picked up better in the search engines.
Yep.
So if there's certain things that you want to be known for that you aren't right now, you know, because like say you're going to SimilarWeb and you're looking at your competitors and you have a post on a similar topic as one of your competitors, you might want to run that as an ad to try to start driving that traffic to your site and make that post more popular. So there's a couple different ways that you can use that information to do ads. Another thing that you can look at is your web design.
Yes.
So when people are coming into your website, are they looking at multiple pages when they come through? Or are they just looking at that one page and then bouncing off your site? Is your web design getting the desired effect? If you want people to sign up for your email list and you're finding that they're not doing that, even after going through 4 pages of your website, you might have an issue.
Yeah.
You know, so you might have to look at the placement of the sign up. What are you giving away with the sign up? Is it enough value for somebody to say, yeah, you know, I just read 4 pages of your site, but no, I'm not going to sign up for your newsletter.
And then you look to say, is my giveaway good? You know, and the other thing too, one of the things, and this is a bit more advanced, but quite possible for anyone, even with a non-technical background, when you grow out an area of your site, so you add in that new area of your site to cover a slightly different topic or look at it from a different edge than you currently do. Once you do that, you should start seeing traffic showing up there. If you have parts of your site that aren't getting any traffic, that is probably an indication that the navigation of your site has issues. You know, and that's one of the most easy things to make complicated is navigation, because people think about it, but a lot of times we overcomplicate and people have to click in and click in and click in to get to certain spots. And on an overall basis, if you have different types of content, you can look to see how much traffic they're getting for people who are on your site. And if there are areas that aren't showing up there, it could mean your navigation has issues. It's not the only possible reason, but that is a thing that you have to consider at that point.
Right. Are you making it too hard for people to find related content on your site? And that's where in episode 41, we talked about linking to related content, putting related posts in at the bottom of your post, trying to get people to say, oh, okay, let me click on this related thing. Yes. Let me go one more page deep. Because the more pages that people view on your website, the higher your results will be. Because it shows like, wow, you've got so much good content on your website, people are staying.
Yes.
You know, it's like one thing that kind of shocked me when we were looking at the stats for Small Biz Life, the average person stays on our site for 17 minutes.
Yes.
And the bounce rate was 26%.
Most definitely.
And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And I think like the average number of person was it like 12 pages or 15 pages or something like that?
I don't remember the number of pages.
It was high.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's gold. Like, that's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want people to come into your site. You want them to stay for a long time, go to lots of different pages, look at different things. that just blew my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it was by far the best in, I think, all those categories for our three main sites. And it's not to insult the other sites, but, it also taught us something else too, where this is a podcast driven site, but we had a lot more site traffic than we expected because we thought, well, people interact with us through podcast. And we actually maybe have more web traffic than podcast traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, part of that we talked about the quality of content. One thing that we've tried to do is put a lot of the details into the show notes. So we're finding is like people are coming, they're reading the show notes, and then they may not listen to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Or we'll see that there's a spike on a page, and then a couple weeks later, there's a spike in that podcast.
And this is something that would maybe concern a lot of people. However, the thing is, I would say take that as a good thing, because there's an arrogance when we develop content that people are going to consume what we want to the way we want to because it's the way we planned it. And ultimately, the important thing when a large portion of your job is creating content is to put it in a way that people want to consume it. And if that's the way they want to consume our show, that's great. The show will drive what's going to be in that page, in that article of the week. But they're two different things. And if people do both, that's even better. We as easy as we can, we want to make our site for the users.
Exactly. So remember we talked about repurposing content. A lot of podcasters and a lot of YouTubers don't like to put a lot of written content because they want people to consume the podcast or the video. I don't care how you consume it. Mm-hmm. Are you consuming it? Are we helping you become better at what you do? That should be the main goal.
Yes.
And it's not downloads or YouTube views. It's helping as many people as you can in the format that's most accessible for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. Yeah.
So
win.
I like it. It's a win for everybody. And then the last one is looking at social media. So we talked a little bit about looking at your stats to see which social media channels you should invest the most time in.
Yes.
If you're spending hours a week on Instagram and you're not seeing traffic, but people are coming to you from Facebook, you know what? Instagram might not be the place for you.
Yeah.
Go where your people are consuming your content.
Yeah. Or sometimes you'll be shocked. You'll get like lots of likes or hearts or whatever that social media pushes. And you think that's your big social media due to the interaction on it. But then when you go back to your website and look at your stats, you're like, wait, I have 27,000 plus ones in Google Plus. But you know what? I'm not seeing them show up as a place that's sending traffic back to my website. So maybe it's actually, I'm wasting more time there than I think I am.
Right. And this could also be too, when you look at content on your website and you're looking to try to develop social media content, you can develop memes off your most important posts. You can be sharing out those posts, creating ads for those posts to try to drive up more traffic. The great thing with the back end of your website is it already tells you what people think are good.
Yes.
So go with that. Mm-hmm. It drives me crazy when people create this awesome content and share it out for 4 days and then never share it out again.
Or they go out and they post it into 74 groups one day, and then they never even talk about it again. And authors do this too with books. This is, I think, a chronic issue where they'll spend months creating a book and they will spend 60 days maybe pushing it, and then they're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, we talked about this in episode 41. Don't just spend all your time creating new content. You have to promote it as well. Don't spend all your time creating new products. Yeah. Promote the ones you already have.
And that was a neat lesson that it seems common sense, but we didn't even think about until we were taking Brendan Bouchard's course, where he's like, you You take a year to develop something. The next year is pushing that one thing until you have pushing it down correctly.
Mm-hmm. You may end up having to retool your message.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another place that stats come in handy is when you're doing marketing. If you're driving a lot of traffic to your sales page and then people aren't buying, you're not convincing them that this product is right for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than saying, well, the product's a failure, clearly, because people aren't buying it. Well, it may not be that the product is bad because they haven't even bought it yet.
That's right.
So they don't know if it's good or not. Your technique for selling is not effective.
Yes. And the first thing that you should not do in that circumstance is drop your price.
Yes.
That should be the last thing that you do. That should be something that happens over time, not right away. The first thing should be, what's wrong with my message? And we'll talk more about split testing at a different time. This is a very big topic. So
yeah. So we'll spend some time talking about that. But Jeff is right. The last thing that you should do is drop your price. You want to check your messaging and make sure that your messaging is clear. Maybe you're not explaining the value well enough. And even sometimes like popping in a free bonus, like, a 20-minute one-on-one call with you if you're selling a course, that might be enough to say, okay, you know what? That'll push the value up. Now people are buying. So tweak your content, tweak your value proposition. Don't tweak your price. That's the last thing you want to do. Okay. So hopefully you'll check out some of these tools. The show notes for episode 42 are going to have the links to the websites that we talked about. It's going to have the important data that you should be looking at and also reminders on how you can use that data. So make sure to go to smallbizlife.com, check out the show notes for this episode. And if you ever have any questions, reach out to us. The best way to do that is to go to our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/smallbizlife. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Small Biz Life. If you enjoyed the show, please take a few minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Please visit smallbizlife.com to view today's show notes, take this week's poll, join the Facebook community, follow us on Twitter, or submit a question for the mailbag. Support the show by checking the resources page or by going to smallbizlife.com/Amazon whenever you shop.
This was Small Biz Life.